Welcome in, everyone, to the Nordic Football Podcast. You're with Steve Wyss and Jonathan Fadugba. The late spring break has now been and gone in both the Eliteserien and Allsvenskan. Nearly a month break in Sweden. Kind of a bit ridiculous, I say it every year. But we're back now. Lots to discuss. Transfers as well, rumours, and also done deals. Jonathan, how's it going?
Hi, Steve. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Nordic Football Podcast latest episode. It's always good to be with you. We had a special guest, didn't we, in the last episode? So no Steve the last time out, but hope you enjoyed the most recent episode with Carl Marius Axum, the assistant manager of Mjällby. That was a really interesting conversation, I thought. And I think, Steve, from what you tell me, the feedback's been pretty good in terms of listens and stuff like that. I've seen it shared quite a lot. Don't think I can really start this podcast without just paying a small tribute to Diogo Jota. Just want to say, sort of, rest in peace. Totally shocking news today in the football world. I think, Steve, we spoke about it just off air before we came on, and both of us are a bit knocked by it, I think, to be honest. So be a bit remiss not to say that that's kind of in our minds at the moment today. As anyone who works in football, if you know what I mean, something so shocking. So, so I just want to pay personal tribute to him and and his family. But yeah, in terms of Sweden and Norway, there's a lot happening actually. It's been an exciting weekend, I thought, in Sweden anyway, with the league coming back. And we had some exciting games to kick off the second half of the season. So plenty to get our teeth into, Steve?
Yeah, absolutely. I would echo your thoughts about Jota there. Really hits you for six, doesn't it? I just must make the point we are recording on the same day that this news came out, the terribly sad news. And thoughts certainly with all his friends and family. It's bad news. It does put life into perspective a bit, really, doesn't it? And let's look at on the football field here. And the Allsvenskan, I thought, came back with a real bang. Actually, I've seen leagues before where you have a month break and teams are out of rhythm. You can get a few damp squib fixtures. But really, the games I watch, I think it's the better of the two leagues to actually watch. I'm not saying it's better quality, but I do think it has more rhythm. I think no VAR does help in that way. But anyway, we've got a really exciting title race as well. Genuinely 5 teams in it. Perhaps I'll just read through some results from the weekend, some notable results anyway. At the top of the table, convincing wins for IFK and Hammarby. Elfsborg dropped points at Värnamo, who are still winless. And Mjällby won. Malmö won in a big clash, really. Not a top of the table clash, but it kind of felt like a titanic tussle between, Malmö still, they are 8 points off the top of the table, but they have to be still considered a contender. And then Mjällby side, who came from 1-0 down to get a result, Jonathan. This was pulsating viewing, actually. I've got to say, it was an incredible watch. I don't know how on earth it went under the goal line. How it went under 2.5 goals, I've no idea. It felt like there was end-to-end action. Lots to take from this fixture. Jonathan, what are your sort of main analysis from this 1-1 draw?
Yeah, a result that keeps Malmo alive was how one sports publication put it, and I think that summed up pretty well. Going into the game, it was timely of us, Steve. I think having the Mjällby assistant manager on the show, because anyone who listens to that and then go back and listen to it on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Anyone who listens to that interview, I think, would come out of it probably thinking Mjällby potentially the real deal here, because the way Carl Marius spoke, his job about being an attacking coach, his responsibility in terms of the squad, the belief he had as well, the belief he had in the manager Anders Torstensson, who we've also had in this podcast back in the day. So you can Google that and YouTube that as well, and go back and listen to the military mastermind Anders Torstensson and what he's like as a leader. If you listen to both interviews, really, you get an idea that these Mjällby are serious people. They're not here to mess around, and they've got a squad that reflects that now, I think, and they've got some really good talents. And I agree with you, Steve. Going into the game, it was a really exciting one from the sense of champion versus challenger. May I be the real deal? Can they really sustain this? We're about at the halfway point now, just nearly at 50% of the way through the season. A real gauge. Malmö significantly behind in terms of points. They've still got, teams like Hammarby, IFK, to catch as well in the title race. So it was a kind of game where if they lost it, especially with European qualifiers, etc., coming in, then you really, even a team like Malmö, you start to think, oof, they might be running out of time on this one. So it was a game of importance, and I think it was a game of quality, like you said. I thought Mjällby showed what they're capable of. Steve, I think you probably agree with me. I think they gave themselves, they gave Malmö a bit of a beating at times. They showed what they can do. Obviously, Malmö started the game quite well. Taha Ali, I thought, was very impactful in the early part of the match, and then unfortunately, I think he actually picked up a bit of an injury before half time, and I do think that maybe knocked him a little bit. He played on, but I thought he was a little bit less impactful from there. But in general, he was probably man of the match and really good, really quality goal. It showed his ability. Mjällby had to fight back, had to kind of figure out different ways of doing it. There was a goal in the second half that they pulled it back, Elliot Stroud, and then of course end of the match, Steve. There was a bit of drama. Colin Rossler, formerly Mjällby player, getting sent off, which he admitted was a bit of a stupid thing on his part, pushing someone, I think, and they shoved him in the face, a bit of a fracas. But it was very interesting. I think one of the Mjällby players actually threw his shirt at Rossler. So there was a bit of bad blood, I think, there at the end of the game. Maybe it was a bit of a kind of, you thought you left us for pastures new, but we're actually ahead of you in the league now. So there was a little bit of a rankling to this game. I don't know if it was related to that or what, but yeah, really entertaining game, Steve. I mean, all in all, probably about a fair result, I think. Jakob Bergstrom did come out and say he's not that impressed with Malmo, the Mjällby striker. He's always got a quote in him, and he let it. He didn't what's the word? He didn't mince his words. But all in all, yeah, it's a result that I think gives Mjällby some confidence. It doesn't quite give them the win that would really give them a massive advantage in the title race. And for Malmo, it's a result that doesn't knock them out of the title race, but it sort of shows that they've still got work to do. So yeah, I don't know what was your thought about the game overall.
Well, what it was, I thought it was a great matchup. It was a complete clash of tactical style. So you've actually got the Mjällby sort of 3-4-3 against what is a 4-4-2 at Malmo now. And when that happens, you're always going to get mismatches on both sides of the ball, which meant there were times when both, especially out wide, players were getting free. This felt like a frantic game. Mjällby are way more attacking and aggressive than I think even I thought. Like, they really were going for it. At times they remind me a bit like the England cricket team, who just go for the shots. You know what I mean? They take chances and they take risks. And I think Malmo were a little bit caught off guard. It was a good early goal, wasn't it, from Taha Ali? I mean, I really rate him, actually. I know sometimes in the past I've accused him.
You didn't rate him a few weeks ago.
No, that's rubbish. No. Taha Ali is someone who I couldn't make up my mind at certain points. There's no denying I think he's a great player. But it's like the end product isn't always there. The final pass isn't always there. He must frustrate his followers. But when he's got finishing like that in his locker, then what can you do about it? He's a huge handful. And I thought Malmö started really well. But Mjällby gradually got back in the game. But in having to get back level, they really did leave themselves open in exposure. I wonder if Malmö might look back and think, I might have missed a trick here by getting a second goal. There was one moment where I think Mjällby had one cleared off the line, or hit the post, sorry. And then literally a minute later, Malmö had one cleared off the line from a set piece. And if it had gone 2-0, it might have been a different story. But it's a deserved draw. It felt like a really good game. And I think Mjällby, I think they're a serious contender for the title. They really are. I think they've proven it. I mean, they beat Hammarby away. They're getting points in matches where they're not always playing at their best. Yeah, I think you've got to give them credit. And I think, actually, you might agree with me or not here, they seem more in tune with their system than what Malmö are in with theirs. Everyone seems to know their role perfectly in this Mjällby side. And I think Malmö are a little bit unsure about themselves.
Yeah, and an interesting thing about the game was you talk about the tactics there. And I thought one of the interesting things was the deployment of sort of Taha Ali as basically the front man with Oliver Berg, and kind of rotating his tens behind Keesa Tellin. So it's a fluid shape because you got Bolin on the left hand side, but the way they kind of played was to try and get Ali into more central areas as well at times. and have Berg in central areas and Bolin more out wide. And I thought it showed signs of maybe working. Oliver Berg obviously got the assist. Bolin put a few decent crosses in. But yeah, it's like you said, I think one of the problems with Malmö this season, they just haven't really been able to sort of understand what is the best 11 and the best strike combination. And that's maybe one of the things about Rydström's system. He's a manager with a lot of tactical fluidity, but also sometimes it's like when you go for sushi every week. Sometimes you just want a steak and chips. You want to know what you're getting, rather than necessarily having fancy flavors every week. So it's a bit of it's worked in the past. So don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking sushi. It's been very successful for Rydström in that sense. Very very dynamic and a lot of flavor. But sometimes you just want maybe some pasta, and I think that is more of Mjällby's system, isn't it? It's more of a spaghetti bolognese or a meat and two veg type system where you know what you're going to get really, and I think that plays into their hands. It's interesting what you say about the attacking side of it, because Carl Saxon did say on the podcast that we had on the last episode that his job is essentially to increase the dynamism of their forward line, and obviously with the striker Abdoulaye Mane, he's come in and had a really good impact. He didn't score on this occasion, but I think he's added a lot of dynamism. And also in terms of some of the players, we might talk about one or two who are linked with transfers in a minute. We've got a few listener questions, but just the system in general is very, very, very well geared, isn't it, Steve? The fullbacks get forward. It's very modern. They've definitely evolved their attacking style, I think. So I completely agree with you on that. I think it now leaves Malmo still on the brink, because if you look at the wider landscape, Steve, they're going into the European qualifiers with a couple of players on outgoing contracts. We talk about Tata Ali, and funnily enough, I think I actually changed your mind on one of the last episodes, because I remember you questioning him, and I kind of said something, and then you were like, the light bulb sort of went off in
You
your head.
convinced me. You absolutely convinced me. Any doubts I had were vanquished by your convincing nature there.
Yeah. So he's the thing is, him and Bolin are both on outgoing contracts. They've only got a year and a half left on their contracts, I believe. So the sporting director has come out and said that essentially one of them is likely to be sold, either in the summer or maybe end of the season. But I think there is some rumours that a couple of their players might go, and they've got a massive squad, Malmo, and I think that's not helped, to be honest. They've got so many options. I almost sometimes think Rydström's trying to keep everyone satisfied. I remember doing on Football Manager, when you used to buy loads of players and then you're like, right, what am I going to do now? And you end up just
getting private conversations with a player saying, I want more game time.
So
then you promise them something you don't do what you promise.
In the virtual world, I've been there. But in real life, it must be about 20 times harder. So, but sometimes I feel that, that's part of the reason that he tries to keep everyone happy and rotate so much. But I think from that point of view, Steve, anyway, my point is, if they were to lose Bolin or Ali, one of their better players, have they got enough to replace them and still continue to catch up? Because that gap is becoming a bit bigger now, isn't it?
Well, one player they have lost for the season is Eric Botheim. Broke his leg, didn't he? So he's done for the season. Why are they not getting anything really out of Isaac Kiese this season? His minutes have been very sporadic. He scored the odd goal here and there, but they need a lot more from him. Suddenly there's a lot of question marks about this Malmö team, and they've got, I think, 3 games before they start the European run. And they're pretty much guaranteed at least, well, they are guaranteed at very worst to be in final Conference League qualifying round. So they're going to have to juggle a lot of games. More than likely, the chances are percentages that they will qualify for the Conference League. I think they'll be the only Swedish team that actually does qualify for Europe this season. I've looked at the draw and the seedings. I think they're the only ones that will. But I don't know. Things have seemed to get a bit overcomplicated with Malmö. From the Mjällby point of view, you asked the obviously assistant manager there last time. What's going to happen with the transfers? They're gonna lose players, aren't they? This window, we think there's at least one player that's very close, if not confirmed.
Yeah, I don't think it's been officially confirmed yet. As of when I checked, I think today, but we understand that obviously Niklas Rockjaer is strongly linked to Nordsjælland in Denmark. We did talk about him with Carl Saxon, so if you want to know more about him, maybe go and listen to that podcast. But yeah, in summary, it looks like they've agreed terms. He was linked with Hammarby. He's a midfielder, Steve, who, we've had a few questions about him. Of course, I think you've got a listener question maybe potentially about him, but I think...
Yeah, from Football in Denmark, our old pal. What can FC Nordsjælland fans expect from Rokia? And is the Allsvenskan, this is a really good part of the question, is the Allsvenskan a largely untapped gold mine for Superliga clubs?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Obviously, our good friend Henry over in Football in Denmark, always good to hear from him. And yeah, I think the first part of the question, what can fans expect? So from what I understand, just doing a bit of background reading and some of the tweets we've had, I think Rockyer is Danish. So my understanding is that maybe he played out wide as a youngster in Denmark at a certain point in his career. But currently, he's a central midfield player. So whether he's changed his position or whether he was out of position in the early part of his career, that's since changed. He's a fantastic player. I think he's arguably one of the players of the season so far. I think you definitely have a strong case to say he's been the best midfield player in the league this season. Carl Marius Axum on the podcast raved about him in terms of his ability, his scanning and screening, his ability to interpret midfield. So clearly a very intelligent player. He can play on the swivel. He's got his head up all the time and very aware. He's decent in terms of passing. His passing metrics are pretty good. Connects play, and he's also got goals this season as well, which is obviously good from midfield. You always want someone who can nick you a goal here and there. So I think he's got 5 goals in his 13 appearances. He's 26 years old, so he's been around a while. But this is really he's started to really get attention now. Hammarby was strongly linked with him. He had it was rumored before the summer break, obviously, that he would go to Hammarby, which I thought might be a bit of a strange move. But clearly they want to win the title as well, so they're trying to strengthen. But I think he could maybe even go higher than Denmark, maybe. But Nordsjælland obviously quite a big club, aren't they? And he'll be returning back home, so I can understand sort of rationale there. And I think he will offer kind of someone who sits in midfield. He gets on the ball, keeps things ticking, but he also can get forward and add goals. He's a threat, sort of arriving in the box late. So yeah, all round dynamic player. I think Mjällby would really miss him. I think it would be a massive loss in terms of if you're looking at title race. Malmö are now 8 points behind still. But Mjällby, looking at the table, they're still only 1 point ahead of Hammarby. I think if they'd lost Rockyer to Hammarby, that's a title race game changer. Who they replace him with will be interesting. Carl Marius Axum has said that he's done a PhD in elite scanning, so he won't be bringing in any midfielders who can't screen and scan. He mentions Vitinha as one of the players that he kind of looks at as a good example. So I don't know how they're going to replace him, but I imagine it'll be a solid signing for Nordsjælland. And on the other part of the question, Steve, I think it's a funny dynamic because we had the new Motherwell manager on the show, didn't we? Former IFK manager Jens Bertel Askew about a year ago. And he talked about how there's a growing market from Danish second division going to Allsvenskan. And he basically alluded to, and if you look at a lot of the transfers, and I think Rockyer is one of those examples. I believe he came from the Danish second division. There's a lot of examples of players coming from the Danish second tier where they're more affordable to Swedish players because the Danish first tier is better than the Swedish league in terms of finances and probably reputation. So the second tier, the wages aren't as good. So there's a very high standard, is what Jens Bertel Askew said, in the Danish second tier that can come over to Sweden and play. So I think a lot of it, Swedish clubs have looked at that market in the last 2 to 3 years, signing players from the Danish lower tiers, giving them the opportunity, and then selling them on. So it looks like a good transfer, a good market opportunity, and it kind of works both ways, doesn't it? Because then they can buy them back. Probably they've got the finances to buy them back, as in this occasion, and then maybe they're at a more advanced stage of their career. So yeah, there definitely seems to be some sort of inter-Danish Swedish transfer rotations there from the second tier to Allsvenskan to top tier.
Where do you see this title race at the moment then, Jonathan? I mean, I'm going to give you a chance here to change your top 3 predictions for the season. We've got, I mean, I say genuinely a 5 sort of horse race here. Hammarby look strong, don't they? They beat Halmstad 2-0. Elfsborg dropping points against Varnamo, surprisingly there. IFK with a good win. I'm interested to see how you think it's all going to pan out and finish with a 1-2-3.
Very tough question because you caught me at. This is probably the worst time to ask because my prediction was Malmö, and they're not quite out of it yet, but they probably are. So it's really, do I stick or twist on the prediction side there? I think it's I said to you, didn't I? I think just on text before we recorded. I think it's going to be a really, really good title race. There's genuinely, I think, 3 or 4 teams that can win it. I still wouldn't count out Elfsborg. I think that they might not win the league, but when you look at it, they're only 5 points behind, and they've got a game in hand. So if they win that game in hand, they could leapfrog IFK. IFK, I think, have been fantastic. I've been really impressed with them every time I've seen them. They do have a wobble in them every now and then, but for example, they beat IFK Göteborg at the weekend. Very interesting story there, Steve. They had a 16-year-old and an 18-year-old in their starting 11, thrown in at the deep end. And the 16-year-old scored one of the goals. So that is a huge emerging story. I'm sure scouts will be running down to watch them already. The forward, I won't put too much pressure on him, but Kevin Filling, 16 years old, starts the game and scores. And obviously at the back, Yannick Geiger, an 18-year-old as well. So the mood in terms of just the general feeling around IFK is very good at the moment, very strong. They've got some good players there, always solid at the back as well. This manager, I think he's had a fantastic impact on the team. Mikael Thomason, who we talked about in the past, the Faroese manager. So if I was to name my top 3 in brief, I can't remember my preseason prediction for second and third. I think I had Hammarby and then I think maybe IFK in third. But I would say Steve... You know what? I can't predict it right now. I can't predict it right now.
I'll tell you, I think Hammarby will win the league. Personally, I just think they're the more complete package. They're less likely to lose players, but I'm going to put Mjällby in second. I am. I think they can certainly get a podium spot. I like what IFK are doing, but I just think, knowing the manager, I'm not sure there'll be enough goals in the team in certain matches. Can they really win 1-0 every week when they need it? Maybe, but Elfsborg are not in Europe, of course. That helps them. From what we've seen so far with Malmö, things can change, and they've got a lot of spending power. But you couldn't back them to win the league based on what we've seen the first 14 games, surely. So where do they end up?
The thing is, I mean, if we talk about Hammarby, my concern with Hammarby, I think Hammarby are the strongest. If I had a gun to my head and I had to pick one of the top 5, I'd lean towards Hammarby. But mind you, Spurs did win a trophy, didn't they? I was about to say that they have got a Spursy reputation, and as a United fan, I can't criticize Spurs right now, so I'll have to probably put that one in the canon now. But Hammarby, I've just the lack of experience of actually winning it is one thing, and also the fact, Steve, I'm still not massively convinced by their forward line. I still think Yusuf Arabi hasn't had a great season. I still think the wingers, although Tunekti had a very good game at the weekend, he sort of started to show his worth, got a goal, but is he going to consistently do it? That's my sort of concern a little bit. I'm not. Paulos Abraham hasn't really worked out so far. He's had some injury problems and he's not been great. Do they have enough firepower? I'm not sure, Steve. That's my question. They're very solid. The game model is very good. The manager's excellent. I think that the way they play, they can play. They can play all kinds of football. They can play on the transition. They've got the Bruno Fernandes of Allsvenskan in Nahir Basara. I think is arguably, is he the best player in Allsvenskan? I think that's a very good debate. But Malmö, I wouldn't rule out Malmö, honestly. But if I had to say a top 3 as of today, I would probably say Hammarby 1, IFK 2, Mjällby 3.
There we go. I knew I'd get a prediction.
But I'm not going to back down from my preseason prediction of Malmö. But if they need to, if that's going to happen, they need to sharpen up. In a few weeks' time, they could be out of it. So that's where I'm at.
If Malmö win the league from this position, with all the European matches they've got going on and likely to be in the Conference League group stage, then they have played some incredible football and the rest of proper cracked. I'm telling you, this is a perfect season to get Malmö beaten in the league. And if they can't do it, if someone can't do it this season, they want, shame on them, really.
They'd have to win pretty much every game from now. But Malmö can do that. That's the thing.
Yeah. They should win the next 3 games before they get in the European qualifying. So maybe if they start putting pressure on, let's see. I mean, I've looked at the European. The problem for the likes of Hammarby and IFK in Europe is they're not even seeded in their first rounds. Hammarby have got a 1 in 6 chance of facing Sparta Prague. Sparta Prague are in the Conference League. Like, they would have absolutely no chance whatsoever. IFK have got a 1 in 6 chance of facing the Rosenborg or Astana. I couldn't see them, and then even if they get through that, they continue to be unseeded. They are not making the Conference League group stage, either of them teams. Hacken have got a better chance of doing it because they enter into Europa. So I don't think this Europe is going to be a distraction for Hammarby and IFK. They can end up probably looking at the league. By the way, the team you predicted in third place was actually Djurgården, who I do believe are actually a team we'll watch in the second half of the season. I think Djurgården could climb up the table a bit. They're my dark horse to sort of not like in terms of finishing position. I don't see them getting in the top 5, but I think they could be second half of the season. They might be awkward opponents if they get their act together, start finishing chances. A couple of other points of order. The team in 6th place, guys, going very well actually in tremendous form. Spearheaded by a striker who just not stopping scoring, and there's already been you search for him on X. And some clubs supposedly looking at him. Ibrahim Diabate, 25-year-old striker. This guy scored a couple of early goals in the Allsvenskan season. Then he went blank for a bit, and now he's on absolute fire. I could have brought him in to my fantasy team on Wildcard, but I didn't do it. Main reason, because I think he'll get sold. I've seen it all before where these strikers find form at the right time and they get a big move. Puts himself in the shop window. What can you tell us about him? Because I don't think we've ever discussed him really on this podcast. Ibrahim Diabate.
Yeah, good. Well, he's top of the Allsvenskan scoring charts, so that's the first thing to say. He's been on a tear at the moment. Really, really good form. I like him, to be honest, Diabate. He's a funny player because he came into the season maybe not expected to be like a first choice. By the way, guys have one of the best expected goals records in the league according to our partners, Wyscout Huddle. They're the second best team in the league for what got expected goals against. So they've got a solid defensive shape to play off. Hammarby, by the way, are the best in the league for expected goals against, and IFK third best. But yeah, Diabate, he is a player that is on fire right now. He is a 25-year-old from the Côte d'Ivoire. In terms of his career, he's just basically moved from Västerås. So had a decent season last season, Steve. I remember him in some games last season for Västerås, and I thought to myself, he's not a bad player, to be fair. He's a tall sort of Ivorian striker, target man type. He can head the ball. He's got a few headers this season. He can score off both feet more or less. Better on his right foot, of course. But in terms of those sort of dynamic, tall, physical target men, that's kind of what a lot of teams in Allsvenskan look for, don't they? And there aren't many of them about. So he ticks the boxes from that point of view. And yeah, he started the season not really even in the team. He was sort of in and out of the team at the start of the campaign. I did think, yeah, he could be someone to watch at the start of the season. But gradually he's kind of, first game of the season, Steve, he only played the first 5 minutes. He came on in the last 5 minutes. He then came on against Gais, scored. He then earned himself a start against Degerfors and scored. And he's sort of been in and out of the team, like I say, 60 minutes here and there. So he's not someone who's like hang your hat on him first choice striker even at the beginning of the season. But as things have gradually gone on, obviously he then broke out, didn't he, with a hat trick against Halmstad. And since then, he's just been on fire. He's scoring every week, really, since then. I think he's actually literally scored every single game since. So clearly someone on a bit of a kind of streak of form. No doubt that's going to attract scouts, as it always does in Allsvenskan once you get a few goals under your belt. There was a lad at Osters, we talked about him last show before Karl Marius, who got a transfer to the Czech Republic, and he got a transfer essentially on the back of a handful of games because he's a Gambian tall player who is quite effective. But he didn't get anywhere near the level of goals of Diabate. So you can already imagine there'll be interest. Like you said, will he be around past summer? It's a very good question at this rate. If he keeps scoring, I think the answer would be no, because he'll certainly be attractive to maybe a Belgium or a team like that. But these days, Steve, the Belgian link is almost we're onto bigger and better things now, aren't we? In these days, Belgium isn't necessarily the be all and end all for Swedish players anymore, or Swedish or Svenskan players. But yeah, he's definitely a player to watch, having a really good season, and good luck to him, because at the end of the day, he is one of the most effective goal scorers at this moment in time. There's a Scottish lad, by the way, funnily enough, at Sirius called Robbie Ewer, who's also doing quite well this season, who's one to maybe keep an eye out for. And then there's the Elfsborg lad, Fredrik Ihler, who many people have as well. He's got 7 goals this season. Christopher Niemann is also the joint second top goal scorer along with Basara. But yeah, those are a few sort of the strikers who are doing well. And I think all of them, and you have to include Abdul Mane as well, I think will have interest as well in the summer in terms of players strikers who maybe get a move.
Yeah, it's this can happen where a player just takes off with form and gets a move based on that, especially the time of year. Teams looking for strikers, they don't grow on trees, do they? But he seems to have developed really well. He looks a real handful. Norrköping, on the field, a 1-1 draw away at Djurgården, despite conceding, I think, nearly 30 shots. Off the field, some extraordinary allegations have come out of the club. Jonathan, talk to us about this.
Yeah, and this will be one for anyone who's maybe a Bolton Wanderers fan. And I'm sure if we clip this up, Steve, there might be a few who are interested to know more about this player, number one, and then obviously the backstory, because it's definitely kicked off in Sweden, Steve. And I think we couldn't really ignore this story this week in terms of things that happen in Allsvenskan. So yeah, extraordinary revelations came out, Steve. Jesper Cees, I think I'm right in saying, was left out of the squad for the game that you just mentioned there, the Norrköping match this past week against Djurgården, who you think will go well. I'm not sure I quite agree. I think they've been the biggest disappointment of the season so far, but keep an eye on that, maybe watch the space. But yeah, Jesper Ceesay wasn't in the squad. Nobody really knew why. He's played 10 games this season. He's not someone who's been, he's not someone like a key player for Norrköping, really. He's always been around, and I've always quite liked him, but he's never actually risen, I don't think, to the forefront of Norrköping as a kind of sort of marquee player that some might have thought he might become, because he has got the fundamentals. He's quick, he's quite strong, he's got a physical kind of athletic profile. I can understand why a team like Bolton Wanderers is potentially looking at him. I don't know how he qualifies in terms of points and things for GBE, but I'd be interested to know a little bit more about that in terms of work permits and how that all works for League One. But the big story around this, Steve, is Norrköping themselves. So essentially, when the game finished, everything was done and dusted. They got a decent point. You thought to yourself, came from behind to get a draw at Diff, which is a tough place to go. And then all of a sudden, Steve, out of nowhere, came this sort of bombshell statement out of Norrköping, and essentially they said, quote unquote, anyway, I don't want to kind of misquote them, but they basically gave the reason for not playing Ceesay as the fact that they'd been threatened by the agent. They put a statement out on their website saying they want to protest against pressure and threats. IFK Norrköping's board and club management have received serious communication from player agent directed at the Association Sporting Director, Mr. Magni Fanberg. The agent in question not only expresses himself derogatorily through personal attacks, but also conveys direct and indirect threats against the Association's sporting director and the association in general. Now, obviously, they said we will never accept or give in to external parties' vested interests and attempts to control how we conduct our business. This association is member controlled, and we protect the interests of the association and its members at all times. The behaviour in question is serious and completely unacceptable, and we condemn this type of communication with the association employees in the strongest possible terms. Now, it's since come out, Steve, reportedly anyway, the agent of or the agency, someone involved at the agency of Jesper Cees, has essentially made threats, or is accused of making threats to the Norrköping sporting director, essentially saying, listen, son, if this transfer does not go through to Bolton Wanderers because he's on an expiring contract, his contract ends in 6 months' time. If you do not let this transfer happen, keep an eye out on your knee, or keep an eye out on your house, or whatever. So yeah, threats have been made. You can't make really a joke out of it because it is quite serious. It plays into something that is an interesting topic though, Steve, because, and this is something that actually came up in my MBA research that I did. The landscape of football agencies in Sweden and how they operate. There is thought to be a kind of potentially criminal element in Swedish football around agencies and how they conduct their business, with accusations of threats made. This maybe not being the first one, for example. So this is not like a rare case. This is something that maybe has happened before, whether it's with this particular agency or just in general. So the wider fallout, Steve, one of the local papers went around and asked every sporting director, have they ever sort of received threats, or has any of their members of the family ever received threats regarding player transfers? How do they feel about these recent comments from the Norrköping board? And it seems to be a lot of the sporting directors came out and said, yeah, well, I've actually been threatened, or yeah, that's not new to me. I've seen that before. So this doesn't seem to be like an isolated case where, a player a club sporting director or manager is threatened in this way. Obviously, that's massively worrying and concerning. And I think it's one thing I learned when I did my MBA research, obviously talking to people in the country. I can't, because of anonymity, I can't say who I spoke to exactly. But I did also get a sense that there is a kind of bit of an underworld of agencies in Sweden in particular, which surprised me really, because, you get different countries and you think how they operate can be, good or bad. And you'd think Sweden is quite a stable country. But from the reports that have come out this week, and also some of the research that I did, it does play into this idea that there are certain agencies that maybe potentially put pressure on clubs to have more control and say over the transfers. Now, the fallout of this, just to sort of cut a long story short, Norrköping have then come out in the last few days and said, we will never deal with this player again. Sorry, we'll never deal with this agency again. So, and it's a big high-profile agency, Steve. If you look into Jesper Cees' agency, they have hundreds of players, I think, on their books. So this is quite a big decision from Norrköping, because it could significantly impact them in the transfer market in the future. They said, we will never deal with this agency again. The current player that we have is under contract, but once that player is sorted, and it looks like he will go to Bolton, I think the fee is now being agreed. Essentially, they're washing their hands of this agency and saying, we'll never work with any of these players again that are linked to them. Now, why this is important is because a lot of other sporting directors, I think Djurgården sporting director Boss Anderson came out and sort of applauded it, and a few others. That feeling of pressure is, a lot of them feel pressured because they know that if they don't bow down to some of these demands, you might lose access to 100 players in Allsvenskan or 100 players in the European market. So the agents does have a bit of leverage in there, in the sense that they can kind of control the sporting directors. So for Norrköping to come out and say, listen, we're washing our hands, we won't do any of your players ever again, it's quite a big statement, really, to be honest, I think, because it then puts pressure on maybe the players to think, well, do I want to be with this agency? And it's something to keep an eye on, because it's a major talking point in Sweden right now, and it seems to affect all clubs.
Extraordinary, like you said. Absolutely remarkable story, really. And so made some very interesting points there, because, look, this is a league where there's a lot of comings and goings. It's as simple as that, really. So, see how it develops from there. The summer window, of course, is in operation at the minute. There's been, I think, nearly 19 million euros income combined, and teams have paid nearly 5 million euros. Most of that income's come at Häcken, actually, who have confirmed the sale. We knew it was happening, of Agbonifo to Lons. I think it's about 7 million. Zidane Inusa has moved to Swansea, 6 million confirmed. And they've actually sold a bit of Bayer Leverkusen as well. Abdoulaye Faye, nearly 3 million euros. He's only played a handful of games for the club. They've been rather active there. Djurgården, I mentioned them. They have actually signed Mikael Andersson from Aarhus, 2 million euros, and also they've signed a striker from Moss in Norway, Bo Hegland, for nearly 1 million euros. 21-year-old, meant to be very, very good signing. another reason that makes me optimistic for Jorgen. The next Haaland. No, not really, but I've heard he's one to watch. Bo Hegland at Jorgen. The transfer goes through on the 8th of July, apparently.
Yeah, and just to recap on that, by the way, we talked about Jurgen being a disappointment. I think Hacken have been one of the most disappointing teams of the season so far as well. I think they've been terrible, really, and obviously lost the most recent game. I think that what I would say about the transfer window at the moment is there's some, we will have a Wisecout blog coming out soon that I've just written, which is about the recent transfer trends and how players like Fire that you just mentioned there are moving increasingly younger, aren't they, Steve? I noticed this week that Benjamin Nygren, good old Benji, who we talked about, I went back, Steve, and went through the old episodes all the way back to 2018. We were talking about Benjamin Nygren. Listened to one of the past shows, and he's just got to move to Celtic. He's only 23, to be fair, so it tells you how long we've been doing this. But yeah, the Wisecout blog will be out soon, just talking about transfer trends and how, a lot of players are getting moves earlier, maybe in their careers now, and maybe to bigger clubs, not necessarily just the old Belgian route that used to happen, isn't it, Steve? It used to just be literally Belgium, but now the market's widening up for them. You can even end up at Tottenham Hotspur, like Lucas Bergvall or others. So, the market seems to be growing in Sweden of scouts and players like Fire not sticking around for too long. So keep an eye out for that on the Wisecout blog. Obviously, our partners, we always have to give them a shout out. But yeah, I think I don't actually expect any huge transfers that's going to significantly change the market this summer, to be honest. It's more about outgoings and who can keep key players, really. If you look down at the bottom of the league, maybe a few of them need to strengthen in certain areas to stay up. But if you look at the title race, Steve, I think it's literally more about the likes of Rokia, maybe Bolin if he was to leave, Taha Ali. Hammarby, like you said, seem fairly stable, although I've read reports Yusuf Arabi might be on the brink of a move to Serie A. So it's who can kind of keep players, as always, isn't it, Steve, in that situation, rather than are they going to sign a key player that maybe wins in the league?
That's why I think Hammarby, for me, you're right, they're more stable. Basara's the best player in the league, pound for pound. And he's not going to go anywhere, is he? So, I mean, obviously he could get injured, but he's not like this banging 21-year-old or anything along those lines. So that's why I would say Arabi, to be fair, has not done amazing things this season, as he's actually been more. I think he started well, didn't he? But then he had an injury, and he's been linked with a move away for about a year and a half. Probably doing some good, actually. And they're a conveyor belt talent these days, Hammarby, it seems. It's not just players on their bikes either, though, Jonathan. The staff as well have been looked upon in the Nordic areas. And there's an interesting... Liverpool have acquired a staff member from an Allsvenskan club, right?
Well, it's not confirmed yet, so it's just speculation. But as always on the Nordic Football podcast, we do our due diligence. I think. Well, there's two reports, funnily enough, and this links back to what I just said about Belgium. No disrespect to Belgium, but Allsvenskan seems to be attracting sort of the attention of bigger leagues these days because two club members of staff at Elfsborg, Steve, appear to be on their way to the Premier League. The first one, which I think is an interesting one because we know him personally, is Jesper Wallmark. He is at Elfsborg. By the way, pound for pound, been one of the best recruiters in the league over the past sort of 5 years. They've been brilliant in terms of their transfers. The players they've identified maybe from the likes of African region, and then the players they've sold on. You can take for example about Valdemar and Brentford. There's a conveyor belt of talent in Elfsborg that you could name. To be honest, I'm trying to think of others. Michael Bailey, who obviously ended up at Plymouth, plenty of others. But anyway, Jesper Wallmark Janssen is a play, and the report is that Liverpool have taken him as their Scandinavian scout, and he could potentially be leaving Elfsborg. That's one of the rumours that's going around. And the other rumour that's going around is that I think their goalkeeping coach, Steve, the man who trained Valdemarsen to get him for that big move to the Premier League, Linus Kandolin, is also leaving Elfsborg and is on his way to West Ham. So, it's not only, like you said, it's not only players, but staff these days appear to be kind of attracting the eyes of people in coaches and clubs in England. So, two transfers there. I think Kandolin is 34 years old. So he's a young goalkeeping coach. He's going to go to West Ham. And as I say there, it looks like, it's not confirmed yet, but it looks as if Jesper Wallmark Janssen will be leaving Elfsborg to go to Liverpool.
Just a couple of questions before we go. Big Sig with a good question. He's asking about Molde and Häcken, both champions in 2022, now considerably closer to relegation. What is going wrong with both clubs? We'll talk about Molde later. Häcken, you briefly touched on them there. They're going to be starting the Europa League qualifying round soon against Spartak Trnava, 10th of July and 17th of July. Winner faces Braga. So that's as far as they'll go. But in terms of Allsvenskan, what has gone wrong at Häcken exactly?
In brief, sold too many of their best players and haven't replaced them with good enough quality. Also lost their manager who won in the league, who obviously did end up going to Molde. And essentially, I think they've got a slightly worse manager, to be honest. And I just think as a stylistic fit, I think the current manager just doesn't really fit the what Häcken have stood for over the past 3-4 years. I think it was a strange appointment, and it just doesn't seem to have really worked out. There's a lot to do there. It's not just the manager's fault, of course. I think it's a mixture of, just like I said, they've lost a lot of their key players. But this season they've been a massive disappointment. Even by all expectations, I think they're doing way worse than they should be. And it's not only that they're doing worse, Steve. It's like the essence of them isn't there really. I feel like the essence of Häcken and what they stood for has almost gone a little bit, which is really disappointing for me to see, because they were such an exciting side and looked like they had the potential to maybe build a mini dynasty, a bit like Bodø Glimt, with the money they get from the Gothia Cup and the sort of legacy they had with the likes of Benny Traore and so on, winning their first ever league title as a club. Just haven't built on it, and it shows you obviously the pitfalls, Steve, in Sweden, in the sense of once the Sharks come for your team and sort of carve it up bit piece by piece, and you lose all those key players, it's a very hard thing to do. You know, if you look at the Premier League, Brentford, Brighton, they're kind of a bit like that, aren't they? That's what Häcken are really. They're kind of like a Brighton. But the more players you lose, the harder it becomes to consistently replace them. And I think they've just got caught up in that. The player recruitment hasn't been as strong in the last year or so. They've still got some young talents, but they've sold them. Inusa wasn't around long enough. We just said that Agbonifo, he's barely been around. You know, I barely even really watched him play, to be honest. And he's off. So it just shows you that you're getting less and less time to even build a dynasty. And that is my concern about Mjällby, Steve, to be honest. With Rocky already probably leaving, Mane will probably be the next one. And then it's like you blink and you miss it. So I think for Mjällby, this is a one in a lifetime.
They've got to go for it now, haven't they?
I think they've got to go for the league. For me, if it was Rocky, I'd stay, because you've got 15 games left. Once in a lifetime opportunity to win the league. But I can understand finances and, you know, career, where you are in your career, maybe returning home. But yeah, because Elliot Stroud, Herman Johansson, some of the centre backs, Mjällby won't keep this team past this season. They might keep a few of them, but it's a very similar thing to Häcken. Do you know what I mean? They've got a once in a sort of generation team, and it's hard to replace when you lose so many good players. So that's what's happened to Häcken, basically.
One other question here, and it was from, I'm just trying to find it now. Where was it? Aiden H17V2. Who's going to get a win first? Haugesund or Värnamo? Incredibly, we have two teams who are still winless in each respective division. Värnamo have actually had home draws against Malmö and Elfsborg recently. They have definitely improved performance-wise, but their fixtures are horrible. In the next 6 games, they've got Hammarby twice, Djurgården, Norrköping, Gais. They could feasibly go, and Elfsborg after that, actually, the next 3, the next 6. They could feasibly go 19 games without a win. Värnamo, unfortunately. Haugesund, just for reference, do have a fixture against HamKam and KFUM Oslo at home on the horizon soon. So I would go Haugesund myself. But Värnamo, it looks like they're going down, Jonathan. But they've had a couple of creditable draws.
Yeah, they've improved slightly since the new management came in. I think that they did well against Elfsborg, funnily enough. I thought they didn't quite deserve a win, but a draw was definitely well deserved. 0-0 draw against Elfsborg, who everyone expected to sort of batter them, really, I think, to be honest. And rightly so, given the league table and how good Elfsborg have been this season, really, with some of their dynamic players. Sandstø, the new manager, sort of come in and looked all right. They've got a few players who are looking quite good, in my opinion, at Värnamo. I think I think Ajay had a really good game in the last match. Kalu is obviously off to Israel, maybe. He's not really been firing in front of goal, which has been a problem for them. I think Varnamo are going down. To be honest, I also think the dressing room is a bit strange. There's a few signings they've made, like for example, obviously Simon Turn has a huge amount of influence there, Steve, didn't he? Everyone remembers last season when he came out and basically slammed the entire squad and said some of these people are clowns of his own teammates. And then you've got like Pavel Sabitsky, obviously, who was banned for I think gambling or match fixing type allegations or spot fixing. He's been given this sort of second chance, but the squad in general just seems to be just really out of kilter. I don't see much harmony there, so I think they'll go down. And I think, like you said, it could be even in the next 6 games. I don't think they're going to really. It's going to need a real turnaround for them to survive, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's going to be really difficult for them. Yeah, it looks pretty bleak. So that'll do for Allsvenskan talk for now. Just want to give a shout out to the fantasy to Russ Bullen again. Miron Hu, he remains number 1 overall in the whole game. Number 1 of everything. So congrats. I think he got in touch on X actually about the last episode we did. But keep going and stay up there, Ross. So yeah, well done to him so far. Okay, we'll see you on the other side. Thanks for listening so far.
Welcome to part 2 of this episode of the Nordic Football Podcast. My name is Jonathan Fadugba, and as always, we're with Steve Wyss. We're moving over now to Norway, and a lot is going on, to be fair. So buckle in. Steve, maybe sound like Sam Matterface when I said that. Anyways, yeah, strap yourself. I think I've been watching too much of the Women's Euros with Sam Matterface, but get yourself ready for part 2 if you've got some refreshments or whatever, because there's a lot to talk about. And the first question I'm going to ask you, Steve, is about the champions. Now, we've talked about the champions in Sweden maybe being out of the title race, but I never thought I would see a table like this, to be honest, even with the games in hand and everything that's going on. Bodø Glimt, the dynasty, the Europa League semi-finalists, the team we talk about all the time, the most effective side of the last few seasons, the team that's built a legacy almost in Norwegian football. 14 points off the top. Now, I know they've only played 10 games. Currently 5th in the table, Steve. Viking currently leading the way. 7 points clear, Viking, by the way, with 33 points. And in the sandwich between Glimt and Viking, you've got Tromsø, Rosenborg, and Brann in second. My question really, and there's a few questions from listeners as well, Steve, is, well, what is going on with Bodø Glimt? Are they in trouble? We've got one here from Jack H010 on X. He says, will the Bodø Glimt winning cycle be done when Knutsen leaves the managerial position? We've got one from, also a question from NVD123 on X, which I think I'll start with. Basically, simple question, Steve. 4 words. Is Bodø in trouble?
Well, this is weird times because obviously Bodø Glimt before the late spring break had a lot on their plate. They had a great run to Europa League semi-finals, which, I said before, it took a lot out of them. They have a 3-week break and they easily beat Brann 3-0. Pretty comfortable win, really. And you're thinking all's well at the mill again, really. Sarpsborg, they just lost against Sarpsborg at 2-1 at home. Sarpsborg was something like a 12 or 13 to 1 shot to win the game, which is huge in terms of football odds. And this is a Sarpsborg team who just look like, at the minute, sort of mid-table. They've just played extra time in the Norwegian Cup. It looked like a slam dunk win for Bodø Glimt. I expected them to win easily, to be honest. They took the lead, poor bit of goalkeeping. Patrick Berg scored. And then somehow a bit of a scrappy goal was conceded before half-time. Glimt dominated all the metrics, but they just seemed too pedestrian at times. They didn't seem to be the intensity of a Bodø Glimt. And then Sarpsborg nicked it late. Really poor, sloppy defending again from a set piece. And there's been a few too many of these sloppy performances from Glimt this season. I can't put my finger on it. I think before this break, we can explain a lot of it with the European run, but we can't. There's no excuses for that. You can't lose 2-1 against Sarpsborg at home, especially when everything else is in your favour. You'd have thought they were the team that had played extra time. I don't know. There's some weird dynamics going on. They've got loads of games in hand. But they really need to play better than that. And I don't know, maybe they just overlook Sarpsborg. Sarpsborg have a great away record, to be fair, unbeaten away. Let's see how Bodø get on. There's a big game coming up soon. They're playing Viking in July, mid-July. So the second meeting's very, very soon.
I think there's two parts of this story, really, aren't there, Steve? Part one of the story is obviously Glimt maybe not being as successful as they have been. You talked about the European run. Clearly, that's going to knock them, isn't it? They haven't even recovered the amount of games, let alone recovered physically and mentally. I mean, they're 4 games behind Viking, 3 games behind Brann in second, 3 games behind Rosenborg, and 1 game behind Tromsø in fourth. So, even a win would take them up to fourth, just based on goal difference. But even if they did get that win, they'd still be 11 points behind with 3 games in hand. So if they were even to win all their games, they're still going to be in second place at this stage, and they've still got to make up those games and the calendar and everything. But the other side of the story is obviously how well Viking are doing to be 7 points clear. Now, for Glimt to lose 3 out of 10 games is a major thing, really, isn't it? Firstly, I think my first part of my question is what is actually going on with Glimt to be losing that amount of games? Is it just fatigue and a bit of a hangover? Or is something deeper there? Because it's not like a team like them to be losing roughly 30% of their matches. And then the other side of it is obviously how well are Viking doing, and might they be too late to catch by the time they get their act together?
Well, when Viking beat Bodø Glimt at Aspmyra Stadion late May, I think that was only the second home defeat that Glimt had at home in the league in something like 3 years or 2.5 years. They usually, on average, lose 1 home game a season. So for Sarpsborg to do that from behind just shows you how kind of unique it is. The one question mark I've got on Glimt is there hunger there? Is there desire there? Is there motivation there? They've won this league quite a lot now. And I certainly have seen a lot of, in terms of Viking, they're desperate to get this title. The likes of Brann Rosenborg really want to get back in there. Tromsø have absolutely loathed the last few years. They're really hungry. They've got a massive target on their back. And I think, they maybe have got ahead of themselves a little bit, thinking they're Bertie Big Bollocks, Europa League semi-final. We know they're probably already thinking ahead to the Champions League playoff round, which they're going to have a great chance to qualify for the Champions League. They're in the playoff round and they're seeded. So are they looking ahead too much? Sometimes you've got to take care of your bread and butter, haven't you? And I've got a few question marks about that. Viking, they let it slip the weekend against a Rosenborg side who are very depleted right now. Viking didn't even have a single shot in the second half and dropped points, 1-1 draw. That's really poor draw under the circumstances. Brann only just won. Rosenborg don't look that convincing right now because of the player situation. So, Glimt might be helped out by some of them teams at the minute. Glimt are on course for 57 points, which I think that'll be enough for second place. So they're going to have to up the ante in the next 20 games if they want to win this league, because Viking, they probably will drop points and they'll have periods where they maybe choke a little bit. But Viking really should be getting between 60 to 65 points now from this position. That would be disappointing if they didn't get in that range. And so Glimt are going to have to, a bit like Malmö in Sweden a bit, they don't have to be completely faultless, but they need to be winning quite a lot of games now before the end of the campaign.
Yeah, interesting points. And currently looking at the kind of statistics from our partners, Wyscout Huddle, maybe saving grace for Glimt is they still have the best XGA in the league. Expected goals against, they've got 12.12 expected goals against. So I know they've played the least amount of games, but that's something to maybe cling on to. That the defense looks like it's okay. The concern, I suppose, on the flip side, obviously talking about Viking, Steve, is they're by miles top of the XG list and scoring goals for fun, really, aren't they, at the moment? 30.82 XG. The closest to them is Brann, 27.43 XG. And then you've got a massive gap to third and fourth, which is Rosenborg and Glimt on 20.91 and 20.28 XG. So essentially, Viking's XG is 10 better than Glimt currently. Like I said, I know that there's a difference in games, but it just gives you a little bit of an insight into what they're doing well and maybe not so well. Obviously, defending quite well, but Viking scoring for absolute fun. If you take the question of, the first listener question there that we had, which is from, I think it's Harry. Was it Harry? Jack, HO10. The Knutsen thing, it's always been there. He's always been linked with clubs. People sometimes, I think, partly, to be honest, I'm surprised he's still there, to be honest. This cycle, is it kind of reliant on Knutsen? Do you think that this is a cycle coming to an end in a sort of Manchester City type way, where everything just goes wrong one season and then it's like they need a total rebuild? Or is it linked to the manager, or is it something that is salvageable? And, do you predict, you asked me about my preseason prediction. You've got Glimt to win the league. In a short, answer or so, do you still back that prediction, or do you think that Knutsen might be in his final months, or where do you see that whole thing? How do you see it playing out from here?
The thing with Cees Knutsen, there's a lot of talk that this will be the end of his run. I think his contract expires at the end of the season, it wouldn't surprise me. I don't know what the legalities are with extensions and things like that. It wouldn't surprise me if he did call it quits at the end of 2025, because we know the main priority, he wants to get him in the Champions League group stages. They've wanted that forever. If they achieve that, then that would be kind of the final box ticked off, wouldn't it? Champions League music, and that's Mira. We know a lot of good jobs become available in December. Look, he was supposedly on the shortlist for the Brentford job. You had Keith Andrews who got that job now. But I think he was in a lot of the top 3 suggestions for that job. So if he's getting linked with that, we know he was on the shortlist for, I think, Brighton as well, before they went for the young lad last summer. So he can probably get what job he wants. If he leaves, though, I don't think it's such a problem, because they are loaded. They have a very rich club. They've made a lot of money. Just say they qualify for the Champions League. They're guaranteed Europa League money, whatever. And they generally made very smart decisions. Knutsen's been a big part of it, of course he has, but they're now at a level where if they replaced him wisely, then they're fine because of the transfer dealings they've got. Now, clubs with money before have made a lot of mistakes. I don't think Glimt probably would do that, so I don't think it would be the end of it. Am I going to change my prediction? I am going to change it. I am. Yeah. I am going to predict Viking will win the league. I think it's their year. I just think certain things have gone their way. They seem more aggressive than normal. I just talk about that 1-1 draw against Rosenborg. They normally lose there. The record at Lerkendal's shocking. So to actually get a draw is maybe not terrible. I like front runners sometimes. I really think it's nice to front run. It's difficult to chase, isn't it? And Glimt will be in Champions League or Europa, whatever, come September. And that we know that takes it out of Bodø Glimt. So I think Viking can win this league. I've said it before. I think Brand will drop too many points because of a European run, and Rosenborg seem to have, unfortunately, have lost a couple of really good players. It might be difficult for them to rebuild. Tromsø could be a dark horse. Might talk about them in a minute. But I think Bodø Glimt will be second this season, and it's a toss-up for third, probably between Brand and Rosenborg, if we're being realistic.
From your point of view, Steve, you talk about sort of front runners Viking. How, you said they're likely to go for it. How are they looking squad-wise? Are they going to be able to strengthen? And, the Trippitt situation, he's a key factor, but I know he's missed. I don't think he missed a recent game, didn't he? And that affected my fantasy team. How are they? You said it's good to front run, but how are they going to actually get this League One? What's at the moment, it looks like just sheer force of goals, but how are they potentially going to win it? And what would it mean as well? Because Viking were a team who were in Obos not too long ago, right?
It wasn't that many years ago they were in Obos, yeah. Listen, they've got Trippitt gets all the attention, and he's the talisman. He's a bit like Basara, a bit like what Pellegrino was for Bodø Glimt, a bit like what Wolf Eichmann was for Molde before that as well. They've got to keep him fit. So if he went down injured, I would be concerned. But they have proven they can win matches without him. I've said before, I think the defence is underrated. Not necessarily because it's a brilliant defence. It's just because the players offer so much of an attacking threat, set pieces and things like that. So, they've got players like Christensen suddenly come and found some form, the likes of Osterbo, Bell. It's a good midfield. They will win the league by sheer weight of goals, though, like you said. They've got so many weapons, not just their attackers, but the defenders. And they've got now a really big lead. They've been here before, kind of thing, where they've been in contention to win the league and they've faltered and I didn't get over the line. I just wondered maybe that might help them now, and they know what they've got to do mentally. Look, 10 wins from 14, that's a brilliant start. 1 defeat, 33 points on the board. And this might be the season where Glimt are vulnerable. And then suddenly we like Branham Rosenborg, there's some question marks over them. It's a great chance. It really is. If they don't win the league, it would, from this point, it would mean at some point that they have choked quite badly along the way, which we don't want to see, really, do we?
Yeah, Trippic really is their talisman. Like you've mentioned there, Nahir Basara, he kind of is the equivalent, isn't he, in Norway? The amount of goals and assists he gets, he contributes on both sides, doesn't he, Steve? 14 GA this season so far, leads the league in terms of goals, joint top goal scorer, along with Kasper's Ho, according to our partners Y Scout, top of the assist table as well, 6 assists, 32 years old. He looks like the main man sort of carrying them, really. Trying to look at who else might be key. Christensen as well is having a good year, isn't he, Steve? He looks like a decent player at 25 years old. Peter Buch Christensen. A lot of transfers I've seen, rumours going around at the moment, which, there might be one or two that you want to talk about before we finish. But moving on, Steve, there's another team that we really can't get away from talking about in this episode. And I think it's summed up by Big Six question, really, in terms of, to repeat it, Molde and Häcken both champions in 2022, now considerably closer to relegation than any title fight. What is going on there? We've got a question from Fish at ESN Fish. Why are Molde still bad? Okay, injuries and that kind of thing. We've got one reply, someone saying half the squad's injured, which is a fair enough comment, maybe. Or he might be talking about Häcken, in fact. But Steve, Molde in 10th is just crazy, really. I know you had them much higher in your preseason predictions. I know the last time we were both on an episode, we said that they're struggling. Those struggles have sort of really continued, haven't they? Nothing's really changing. Can you just talk to us a little bit about that? Because most recent game lost 2-3 at home to K from Oslo, of all teams, really, Steve, which is unbelievable to a certain extent, given K from's history.
Well, K from Oslo proved last season they're a really dangerous away team. Their tactics and style just work really well on the road. But Molde shot themselves in the foot here. If you look at the XG metrics for the game, K from dominated, but they were given 2 penalties. Molde had a penalty as well. Molde shot themselves in the foot with individual mistakes, silly errors. The defence was blown open a couple of times on the break. Pretty obvious stuff, really. They're making too many basic mistakes. Hogmo, I think I said on the last episode, either back him or sack him. I think they should get rid of him. I think they need to cut him now. I just don't think it's the right fit for the club.
Surely not. It's too early.
Do you know what? You'll laugh at this, but they did have a recent win at Vålerenga, 3-2. Guess what? He wasn't on the sidelines because he was recovering after some sort of eye surgery. So they win when he's not there. It just feels like the wrong fit. I'm absolutely nothing against the manager. I think he's got proven history. It's just not the right fit. Too many. I mean, the home record is shambles. It's appalling. How many games have he lost? 4 games out of 6 they've lost at home. This used to be a fortress. No one would ever beat them here. The Aker Stadion. It just seems like the atmosphere is terrible. A lot of different things have led towards this, but fundamental question why they're doing so poorly, because on the field they're making too many basic mistakes. You can't do that in any league, can you? So is that on the players? Is that on the system? I don't think they're comfortable in the system. Lots of things going wrong.
In your opinion, Steve, just a very brief one before we move on with Molde. Like how soon is too soon to sack a manager? Because that's ridiculous. He's not even done half a season yet, to be honest. So, okay, stylistically, you could say he needs time, but surely, you could say stylistically it's not working, it's not a fit. But surely he needs time to implement his own style. This is the guy who won the league with Hacken. I mean, surely they would take him back in a heartbeat, I would have thought. So how soon is too soon to sack a manager? Because at the end of the day, Steve, surely he needs more time than one window in about 12 games.
I think they maybe expected Hogmo to come in and be an instant fix. But it's quite clear that to get the players that he wants for his system, perhaps a lot of dead wood needs to be cut as well. You're talking way more than one transfer window, aren't you? You're talking 3 or 4, even for Scandinavian levels. So do they have the patience for that? Molde, a rich club, well-funded, probably behind Glimt, the second most in terms of that way. So 10th place isn't good enough. Let's be honest, in recent seasons, several big sides have been relegated, who never we would have thought they'd have gone anywhere near the drop. So you've got to be careful here. Look, it looks like Haggis and the Strømsgodset are probably dead this season. So that might be a bit of luck. But the playoff spot's still open. They're only 3 points above the playoff. Can you really afford to take a risk? I mean, the fans, I think, want him gone. The pressure's mounting. It just feels like a matter of time, Jonathan. I've seen it before, where it's just not the right fit for the coach. If they stick with him and it eventually down the line they win the league or something, I'll hold my hands up fully. But I don't see them keeping Hogmo. I think it's just, just looking at their next few fixtures now, I think they've got Tromsø on the board. But you wouldn't back them to beat anyone. Generally right now, Fredrikstad and Tromsø away next two very astute tactical defensive teams. And they've got Godset at home. If they don't win that, then I think he would be on his bike.
Incredible, really, to think that, to be fair. But yeah, as some of the listeners have pointed out, it's things are not going well. So it's a sort of a watch this space situation, I suppose, in some ways. Steve, there's a couple of teams down the bottom that interest me in the way KK from. I know there's been a managerial change at HamKam. You might want to talk to us about the new manager there as well going on. But I think one area, although we'd like to talk about Brandon Rosenborg a lot, maybe as well, I think one team we can't ignore at this moment in time is Tromsø in fourth. Now, we've got a question here from Christian Samuelson at Hverdag Debutan, I believe, who says, "Hi, conduct a review of Tromsø and provide a new assessment of why things are going so well. Preferably, Steve, in a better way than you did in 2023, when one of you believed it was mostly just luck. Now, the one of you in that sentence is not me. So I think this is a 2-year-old beef coming home to roost, Steve. We've got Rosenborg in third, Brann in second, and Tromsø in fourth, above Glimt, by the way. So Mr. Christian Samuelson, I believe, has basically got a question for you that you need to answer for. What have you got to say about that and Tromsø's season so far? Because they're doing really well.
Well, I'll tell you what, I did predict Tromsø to finish 6th this season. Now, I don't think there's anywhere else out there who had them as high as that. In the media, in the pundits, all that sort of thing, had them down, 9th, 10th, some are even saying relegation. So, yeah, it doesn't surprise me that they are doing quite well this season. They did start poorly. They've now won, I think it's 5 games in a row in the Eliteserien. 6 in a row. And, I don't think anyone really saw that run coming either because of that bad start. But one thing they've really got in this squad is the huge hunger, motivation, desire. They've been not embarrassed, but it's been bad for them, hasn't it? Bodø Glimt, their arch rivals, have become the best team in Norway right now. And that's got to hurt. So I think they're always wanting to prove themselves a bit. In terms of the metrics, though, yet again, just as it was in 2023, they don't rank high on the metrics. They've got the, just looking now, the 4th worst average expected goals per game. 1.27 goals per game. The only 3 teams ranked below them for that are Haugesund, Fredrikstad, and K from Oslo. And then in terms of expected goals against, not great either. In the bottom half of that, 1.55 per game. Now, a lot of that might be distorted because the first 4, 5 games, 6 games, they really were quite poor. So they might have taken quite a few batterings in the XG terms. So it can be misconstrued a little bit. But they might be one of them teams, and every league seems to have one. There's a team in Germany, Heidenheim, who do by nutting every single season recently, where they, for some reason, their results do not correlate anywhere with their metrics. I think Tromsø are one of them teams, and you've almost got to take them. They have their own set of rules, really. What I have liked about them on the field recently is in both boxes at crucial times, they have delivered. Like if they've needed to see out a game, keep a clean sheet, they've managed to hold, scrap really hard. They've scored some late goals. In the big moments, they've done well. That's a good sign of a team, isn't it? Those are sort of moments you almost can't judge on metrics. So, yeah, and I mean, look, I said pre-season 6th place. I like the squad. I like the direction they're going in. And I certainly still think they'll be in the top 6 this season now. And they could even be a medal team because they're not in Europe and they're keeping going on strong. But listen, for those out there who judge teams purely on metrics, they've got to do an awful lot more, especially in the XG department, you would think. You can't be 4th worst XG and finish in the top 6, really, can you? But they might come on for the run. They might improve this season in the attacking department.
Fantastic stuff and a good riposte there. And I'd like to say a personal thank you to the listener for that question and for listening for so long, because listen, we're here to give our opinions, and if people listen long enough and want to call us out and stuff, I don't think there's anything particularly wrong with that. So I'm very happy about that. Thank you for sort of putting Steve.
I mean, you thought they were lucky 2 years ago, Jonathan, right? I presume it was me maybe he was talking about. But
No, it's definitely you. But I'm glad you put him under the ringer. But no, it's always good when we get listener questions. It kind of, context is important, isn't it? And I remember that season where you were a little bit down on them. But like you said, you're a fair man. You base it on metrics as well, and you base it on evidence. It's not a personal thing generally with you, Steve. I know what you're like, unless it's Christiansen, who you tend to be a little bit biased about sometimes, maybe. But it's all right. We make up for it for the fact that I'm still looking to get the Christiansen shirt. So we're all good on that front. I just want to ask you, just related to Christian Samuelsson's question about Tromsø there, Steve. If you had to predict, you asked me in part 1, if you had to predict the top 3 as of now, you've got Glimt there in 5th. You've got Tromsø hanging on, like you just said, they could get a medal spot. Rosenborg going pretty well, aren't they? And Brann kind of hanging in there, and Viking way clear, who you've now said that you think will win a title. If you had to predict the top 3 in European positions, like as of now, is there anyone below that you might put in? Or do you think it will stay like this, or do you think what would you be your top 3 maybe for if you were looking at it towards the end of the season now?
I think Viking will win the league now. I'm going to go Glimt in 2nd place. 3rd place is a genuine toss-up between 3 teams. I've got to go with probably one of Brann or Rosenborg. Let's go with Brann, but I'm not sure about that. Tromsø definitely could get in the medals. It wouldn't surprise me, but again, they've got to improve the metrics a bit. I don't see anyone else getting in the top 5. Sarpsborg, a little bit of a dark horse, I suppose. Unbeaten away from home, only played 11 matches. They could probably end up getting 6th this season. Yeah, but it doesn't surprise me. Tromsø are in the top 6.
And the other thing I wanted to ask you before we move on, Steve, in terms of Rosenborg, do you have any updates on the Sverre Nipan rumours? A little brief transfer discussion. I know there's a few other key players who have either moved out of the league that you might want to touch upon, and some moving in or cross. But could you just talk to us a little bit about Nipan? I believe he's been linked with Manchester City.
Well, by all accounts, it was a done deal, wasn't it? I think it was mid-June. Looked like we got the here we go. And I'd imagine in the background it probably is. Strong talk that Man City are going to sign him and going to loan him to Girona, the sister club, or whatever you want to call that club. Which that would be an interesting one, wouldn't it? Be going into La Liga for a season on loan there. It looks like he's going to be sold. They have sold Marius Broholm to Lille. Big loss for them. It's been a really bad run for Rosenborg because they've lost. Nipan hasn't been playing. Broholm's gone, and they've had bad injuries at the back. So they've been the team to face recently. Christiansen battered them 4-1. But that didn't surprise me because Rosenborg's 11 for the last 2 weeks has just been nowhere near at the level they want it to be at. So they're going to have to sign players this window. They have signed on a permanent Sider. He is now a permanent signing, but they need to be going into the market again. Bit of a shame, really. If they kept that crux of that 11, for the whole season. I think Rosenborg would have been even the dark horse to win the league. But it's just come at a wrong time for them. And just before we start off, I just want to answer a question that Spoonshy asked about Strom's Godset. Where did it all go wrong? They won the league 12 years ago. It's difficult. It's difficult to say exactly. They're another team. They have sold Logie Thomason to Samsunspor in Turkey for nearly €1 million. Sold Dirkelsen as well. Looks like Farji, who's had a great season, is going to be leaving. Looks bleak. Haugesund haven't won a game yet, but Strom's Godset have lost an almighty number of fixtures, 9 out of 11. And I'm actually scratching my head where it did go wrong. I thought they looked all right heading into this season. The only issue was lack of transfers. I think that's the only explanation I can give. They haven't been able to bring in enough new faces, and the squad's been too light. But Fadugba's now in at Strom's Godset, a legendary manager, of course, in this league. Can he keep them up? I just don't see it based on what we've seen so far.
That'd be a real shame. Obviously, I went to visit Godset not long ago, and things seem to be going quite well there. Nice stadium, nice weather. It was only a year ago. It's just over a year now. Down in Drammen, I really enjoyed my time there. But yeah, like you say, 5 points off it now behind KFM. Steve, before we just wrap up, could you just give a word to the relegation battle? Because Bryn are doing quite well. Fredrikstad are doing quite well. A lot of the promoted teams are having a bit of joy, aren't they? Salzburg seem to be, doing well. My boys Christensen are doing well. HamKam sort of changed managers. And we've got the Haugesund issue, similar to, the question we had in part one about Vernamo. I mean, what's it going to take for Haugesund? Will they win a game this season? They've got 18 left. And as of now, if you're predicting the bottom three, are you saying that Godset and Haugesund down basically, and then who would be in the relegation before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, there's been 4 managerial changes already this season since the season kicked off, not even including the pre-season changes. This is really unusual for Norway. All 3 of them clubs have got new managers, like you said. HamKam have appointed Thomas Myhre, former Everton goalkeeper. He's actually got a great record at Moss. Points per game at Moss was 1.71 in over 100 games in their second tier. I've never really liked goalkeepers as managers, got to be honest with you. Don't know what your feelings are about that, but Myhre might book the trend. Started with a draw against Bryn. Bryn have done well. I really like how they've been attack-minded and kind of been willing to get involved in shootouts. KFM Oslo are just starting to find a bit of form now, a bit of second season syndrome. I think they'll be fine, KFM Oslo. So you're looking for the playoff spot probably between the likes of Bryn or HamKam, really. I do think Haugesund are down. They've just drawn a game. They've got a new manager, of course, a Finnish boss. He started with 2 4-0 defeats. Still haven't scored a goal under him, but they did draw against Christiansen 0-0. They're going to win a game somewhere, aren't they? But looks bleak. And then for Germo, can he put a bit of magic into Strom's Godset? They're going to have to sign players. Otherwise, he hasn't got the tools to work with. So just based on squad strength, I'd probably put Bryn in the playoff. But, over 30 games, it might be quite difficult for them to avoid being in the bottom 3. It can catch up with newly promoted teams, can't it? But the bottom 2 do look done, sadly, for fans of those out there.
Well, one beautiful thing about these 2 leagues, Steve, is that you never know what's going to happen. I did have a final just question about VAR and how that's going, but I think we'll leave that for another day because I was watching, funny enough, a game, Allsvenskan game of the weekend, and I started to think to myself, are Swedish refs now the best in the world because there's no VAR? I'll leave listeners with that thinking point because if you think about it, they're the only referees in pretty much the whole of Europe who have to make decisions now with no evidence to back it up. So yeah, there was an offside controversy in one of the games, and it did get me thinking that. But obviously, Norway does have VAR. But that'll do for now. We've had some predictions, we've had some transfer rumours, we've had a lot of stuff going on in both leagues. Always, as ever, Steve, it's good to see a cheeky little smile on camera. So that'll be all for this week's episode of the Nordic Football Podcast. We've got another guest potentially lined up and working in the background, maybe, to try and secure another one. But if you haven't listened to the Carl Marius Axon podcast, I think it's definitely worth it, even if you're just a football fan in general, because we have a really good discussion about midfielders, which I loved, Steve, as you can imagine. I even gave you a shout out on your affinity for goalkeepers on that show. But yeah, we've had quite a few guests this season. So go back into the archives, follow us on Twitter or X at Nordic Foot Pod, subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can find us also on patreon.com/Nordic Football Podcast. That's where you'll get exclusive access to our interviews early. And also, you can also contribute if you do like the show and support via that platform. So that'll be it, Steve. I'll leave you to enjoy your evening. And as you say, I just want to echo your message. Life is short. You got to enjoy it. And thoughts and prayers again, as I say, with the family of Diogo Jota, and obviously, anyone who's going through similar situations, because that tragic news, can't let it get away from us. But it's been an enjoyable show, Steve, as I said, and I'll see your beautiful smile again soon, hopefully.
You know why I'm smiling? That question you've just asked, are Swedish referees the best in football? Can you imagine the comments coming through now from Allsvenskan fans? I watched
They'll definitely say no.
Glenn Nyberg, right, at the Club World Cup. I've got to be honest, I've not been impressed with his performances. He's not a referee I particularly rate that highly on that stage. But look, they are dealing with no VAR. So, it's kind of, I suppose you've got to give them, at least not going to mess up a VAR decision, are they? They're not going to mess that up.
You can look at it two ways, because they're the only ones who can't have the benefit of VAR, but at the same time, yeah, who knows?
Well,
I think it's a rhetorical question. I don't mean it literally. It's not something I believe.
Thanks everyone who listened, and go out there and enjoy yourselves. I think that's almost one of the takeaways from today. But we'll see you next time on the Nordic Football Podcast. It was thanks everyone who's been subscribing to the channel, watching on YouTube, giving us comments, questions as well. Really appreciate you all. Take care, and we'll see you next time on NFP. Goodbye.